Connection. I'm Mira Rubin, and this is Maggie here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic, oh boy, I knew a minute ago, and I will know in just a minute. Today's topic is reclaiming the fractured self. And I am excited to talk about this. And let's before we jump in, let's take a minute or two to get settled and present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it, and imagine clean crisp oxygen just flowing into your lungs and flooding your bloodstream with wonderful vital energy and nourishing all your cells and all your organs. And now let's exhale any tension, any stress, any fatigue or negativity. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, electrifying, energizing, illuminating your molecules and your electrons, and lighting your cells up from the inside out so that you just glow and shine your light into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension or stress, fatigue, negativity. And now let's just gently press our palms together, really softly rub your fingers against your palms and feel the deliciousness of that sensation, the tickling and the tingling, and how wonderful and amazing it is, miraculous it is to be able to have these wonderful sensations in our physicalness. So welcome, welcome, welcome. It's Friday, and it's great to be here with you. So reclaiming the fractured self. I did an exercise with my coaching folks yesterday, which was really awesome. And it came from a revelation that I had in conversation with a friend, where it became clear that we so often, when we experience a trauma. Good morning, Irma. Wonderful to be here with you. When we experience a trauma, or when we see ourselves behaving in ways that aren't consistent with what we would like to believe ourselves to be, or who we would like to believe ourselves to be, we end up exiling these parts of ourselves. We either lie to ourselves about them, or we deny them, or we lock them up in the basement or an attic where we don't have to look at them, where we don't have to be confronted by them, because we judge ourselves we judge those parts very harshly, shall we say. And so what we did yesterday was an exercise where we recognized our lives as this remarkable masterpiece performance. You know, when you go to a movie or a play, there are villains, and there are heroes, and there are pathetic characters, and there are characters that are admirable, and there's all this drama. And without any one of those characters, the drama, the complete masterpiece, would not be whole. It would not be the same masterpiece with that if any one of those characters were missing. And so what would it be like if we go back and source these parts, these characters in the life of our own masterpiece performance, our own production of our lives, the drama and the story of our lives, and bring those characters back onto the stage, at least for a curtain call, you know, at least for a bow for their role in this masterpiece that is our lives. So a curtain call, after party, you know, what happens is that there are heroes and villains, as I said, and some get killed off, or left by the wayside in the course of the production, whether it's a movie or a play or whatever. But at the end, everybody gets recognition, right? And you're not, admittedly, you're not at the end, but why not have an interim celebration of all these parts to welcome them back in for their contribution to this incredible journey. And so the thing that shifts our experience of being broken or fractured to an experience of wholeness is the integration and embracing of these parts that we have exiled or denied or abandoned. And when we take our perspective away from judging all these parts or believing that they are who you are who I am, like that I am any one of those parts, what we recognize is that we are not any one of those parts. With them all on the stage, we get to see that we are all these things. And because we are all these things, we are none of them. We are the container in which they reside, or the container through which they are expressed. and and that no one of them takes primacy necessarily over the others. Now, that's, I guess we can evaluate that statement. Maybe there are there are the main characters, and then there are the peripheral characters. And a lot of times I think what happens is that these peripheral characters get elevated in our minds to be center stage main players. And in fact, that's not the truth. So, for instance, if there's a character in our character that has been the villain, we tend to give that villain a whole lot more billing on the marquee than they warrant. Usually, it's not the villain that's the main character, but the villain ends up getting top billing for some reason. And when we look at the whole performance, maybe we can put those different characters in their place, and to recognize that they had a critical role, but it may not be as important a role as we have believed it to be. And maybe you get to recognize that there are other parts that have a much bigger role, a much bigger place in shaping the story than you had given that character credit for. Good morning, Tammy. Welcome. It's great to have you here on this Friday. We're talking about uh, recovering or healing or retrieving the fractured self, and bringing all these parts together to recognize that we we become whole when we reclaim these parts of ourselves that we may have disowned or exiled or hidden away from our awareness, so that we don't have to face them because maybe we have some shame or blame or resentment or pain, sadness, sorrow. We might have all kinds of regret around these different parts, and therefore we wall them off, and end up with these holes in ourselves because we have denied aspects of our being that are important in shaping who we are. If you think about, good morning, Robert, welcome, great to have you here. If you think about drama, or entertainment, that we consume, that we enjoy, what are the facets of a good story? You know, there is the hero, perhaps the hero's journey is that there's all kinds of there's a fatal flaw, right? The hero has some kind of fatal flaw, that, and maybe not fatal, hopefully, and because of that flaw, they get led down a path and they experience all kinds of pain, and then there's an awakening, or a new level of awareness, and all this other kind of drama happens along the way. But it's a story of, good morning, Elaine, welcome, welcome. It's typically, the hero's story is a story of, um, for lack of a better word, sin and redemption. You know, I don't know that I believe in sin, but maybe failure and recovery, and potentially flourishing. You know, what is the hero's journey? Is going through the dark passage of the soul to come out to a new awareness, a new awakening, a new presence. And so if we look at our lives from that vantage point of this remarkable story that has been our journey in our lives, if we look at it as high drama and look at it as the hero's journey, all of a sudden those weaknesses that, or those character traits that we perceived as weaknesses, and those uh, situations in our lives that we perceive as tragedies, all of a sudden they become an essential, a quintessential part of the story, right? They become the seed for the possibility of the hero emerging. And so reclaiming these parts of ourselves that we have exiled is something that is an essential step in really coming into our wholeness. And so many of you have spoken about the the incredible challenges that you have encountered in your lives, and moving through them. And some of you have moved through some of those places in this space together with this group of people that shows up here with some regularity, that I'm so thrilled to be building a community here of people that are getting to know each other, and to be sharing the struggles and the triumphs. And when we recognize these elements of ourselves and our lives as part of this massively magnificent masterpiece of our story, then it, we can shift the context, and we can recognize the importance of the character that was the one that had the the fatal flaw kind of thing. We can recognize the parts that were the villains as well as the parts were the heroes, because they're all they're all critical to the story itself. So, welcome, Hope. Good afternoon to you. We're talking about reclaiming the fractured self, and the metaphor that we're looking at is theater. And hello, Dennis. Welcome, welcome. The metaphor that we're looking at is theater, or movies, where we're looking at the story and all the different plot lines, and imagining ourselves as our lives or our story as a movie or a play where we have played all the parts. So all the different elements of ourselves, all the parts of ourselves that we have been throughout our lives, all the different expressions, and the parts of ourselves that we have denied or exiled, or lied to ourselves about, or feel so much shame that we can't even see them. If we recognize them as players in this wonderful drama, then the perspective shifts radically to be able to recognize it, how each element, each experience, each character is a critical part of the greater picture. And also, we were talking about the billing of these characters on the marquee. That oftentimes the characters is in our memory, in our lives, who we've been. They may have played a very minor role, but we end up elevating them to super high importance and give them top billing on the marquee when they're a minor character. Maybe we made some kind of transgression at some point in our lives. And good morning, Gia. Welcome, welcome. I'm sorry I didn't see your name there earlier, so it wasn't intentional. Sorry about that. Great to have you here. So, so we get to recognize that maybe some of these minor players we elevated to a position of importance that they really don't deserve. It's like, well, there was this one scene with the villain in it, and the movie was 2 hours long, and the scene with the villain was 5 minutes, and now all we're remembering is the villain. Like, what's up with that? That's kind of something that we do to ourselves in our lives, is to remember these parts of ourselves or these characters that had minor roles that were important roles, but they certainly don't deserve top billing. So I wonder for you if you recognize these characters in your life, where you've been a hero, where you've been the villain, where where these parts that you have exiled, that you just refuse to recognize. Maybe it's your child self who felt tremendously abandoned, and there was so much pain associated with that character that um, you ended up putting him or her away in a closet somewhere, because that character was just too painful. So maybe it's time to let that character out of the uh, the the room that they're locked into, and invite them onto the stage also for the curtain call, or for the after party, or for the celebration of the first tour uh, going live. This is an opportunity to create a new perspective on your life. And there's a respect and acceptance and integration of these exiled or denied parts of ourselves that enables us then to be whole. So we talked about, I think we talked about, I don't know if it was here or not now, it's a blur, the power of secrets. When we have a secret, it has power over us, typically, because there's, like maybe there's a part of my past that I'm keeping secret because I have some shame about it. Well, as long as I keep it secret, I can have shame about it. When I can take ownership of it and recognize that that's not who I am, it's just a part of what my behavior might have been at some point, then I have the capacity to be free of its hold on me, right? Of whatever that is, that experience or that memory that I'm feeling so ashamed of. When I allow myself to take ownership of it, to incorporate it into my awareness of the richer whole that I am, and how that was a part of shaping this moment in my life, or shaping the person that I am or choose to become, then the whole perspective shifts. And Robert says, may I share some changes that I've made to the registration process for my master class? Robert, I think I'd rather not. I think you had your time in the sun, but if you want to post the link, you can. But I'd rather not divert our time to that today, if you can give me that grace. I have a 9:30 appointment, so I'm going to be leaving a little before 9:30 this morning. So please feel free to post the link, and thank you for asking. So anyway, I think we get to look at our lives maybe as if we look at scenes in a film or a movie. Um, so Irma says, I think my shame secret, and thanks, Robert. I'm I don't know if that's the whole sentence that you meant, Irma, but the shame, yeah, we keep if we look at shame, shame is tied to events, right? And events and judgments of ourselves, right? So uh, remembering certain events and feeling ashamed about them. So the thing is that that shame gets elevated. That event, that transgression gets elevated to a place of greater importance and greater prominence than it really deserves in the context of the whole play, right? And so then our life becomes about holding that shame and having that secret. And Irma says, has been feeling the pressure of me with the idea I have to suffer to save me and others. Oh boy, Irma, you know what? You're not alone in that. And it's kind of a crazy equation to say my suffering is going to save the world. Now, um, as I'm saying that, I recognize that that's kind of the foundation of Christianity in a way that Jesus suffered to save the world, right? I mean, I'm not Christian, but if we look at that model, what an example, right? So there's the primary example of my suffering or Jesus's suffering alleviates the sin of the world or the suffering of the world. And what if we take that on ourselves? If we say our suffering alleviates the suffering of others, I think we get to see that there's not really an equation there. And I don't know if this is blasphemous. I hope you don't take it that way, but I see a lot of suffering in the world. And I don't know that Jesus' suffering alleviated the suffering for the world. And I know that the understanding is that when one accepts Jesus into your heart, then that suffering is relieved. I don't know. I don't know. But I am saying that it's for humans, at least, to take on the suffering of others in order to save them. It's a faulty equation. It's an absolutely faulty equation because the more I suffer, the more those around me suffer through me too. It's suffering begets suffering in my vantage point, especially if we're looking at law of attraction and frequency. And the my pain is not going to alleviate yours. What may alleviate your pain is if I can lift myself, perhaps my lifting of myself may lift you. A rising tide raises all ships. So Irma says, yes, but the difference is that that was his job, not mine, right? And I kept trying to do it like it's my job. Yes, exactly, Irma. It wasn't your job. It wasn't your job. It took a superhuman being to be able to take on that job. It is not your job. And it does not help others to have you suffer. And so please realize that when we choose to suffer, what are we doing? We're setting an example also. I don't think it's an accident, like if a revered figurehead is setting an example of beingness, that maybe we would take that on as the way to be, so with that example of suffering to save the world, if you are an adherent of that faith and believe that example, then it's not unnatural to want to emulate that. I get it, but it's a whole different ball game. We are not um, the we are not that figurehead, right? And frankly, I just really believe that this is a time for us to be learning about freedom and about elevating our awareness and our experience to abundance, to love, to appreciation. And I know that that was really the foundational message, not the message of suffering. So it's interesting because as I'm seeing it in my head, I never ever realized this. And it's so obvious, it's so present. How could I not realize that that's where the paradigm of suffering comes from, or the paradigm of the virtue of suffering comes from, right? Because this figure that is most virtuous emulates that, or shows that, demonstrates that. And so why wouldn't we emulate that if we are looking to achieve uh, the closeness with God? Wow. Wow. So Irma says exactly, that was the right message. Yeah, it's this is a revelation for me. Actually, I have to go because I told you I have a 9:30 appointment, but this was a revelation to me to say, "Oh my gosh, no wonder there's so much suffering, that we elevate and revere suffering. They're so long suffering, and we put so much value on suffering. Well, no wonder, because look at the role model that said, "Oh, if you suffer, you can save the world." Even though it wasn't for us to take that on. So I'm blown away. Anyway, I want to say thank you so much for joining me, for being here and engaging in these incredible conversations. And I love you. I am so grateful to you. And I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And Maggie and I, she's off somewhere. My little bird alter ego. Uh, we go live each weekday morning on Enlightened World Network on the Facebook page. Please check out the wonderful programming on Enlightened World Network. I can't read your comments right now because I have to run, but so much love to you. And I wish you a wonderful weekend and look forward to being again with you next week. Take care, all.